Farmers are on high alert for a mouse outbreak as they head into seeding time. CSIRO researchers are trapping hundreds of mice on the Adelaide Plains, and farmers are being urged to consider baiting as they sow their crops. Steve Henry is a research officer with CSIRO and joins us now. Good afternoon, Steve.
Hi, Roz.
So how bad are mice numbers right now?
Yeah, they're certainly here on the Adelaide Plains. They're quite serious. We would be expecting most farmers to be preparing to bait as they sow their crops. Over in Western Australia, the situation is much worse. It's almost close to the level that we saw in New South Wales in 2021, where there were literally thousands and thousands of mice per hectare.
So why are numbers so high again then, Stu? Because we all remember those horrible scenes from a few years ago when farms were so overrun.
Yeah, absolutely. Western Australia is a little bit different to the eastern states in that historically mice haven't been a really significant problem over there. But now, as we're seeing a lot better crops grown over there more often, there's more food in the system more often. They had a couple of really good seasons that's put a lot of food into the system. And then conditions through the summer have been favourable for mice to continue to breed. And now we're seeing them at really peak numbers as the farmers are preparing to sow their crops.
And they breed so quickly, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the numbers that I keep talking about. They start when they're 6 weeks old and can have 6 to 10 babies every 19 to 21 days. But the really important issue is that they fall pregnant again within 2 to 3 days of giving birth. So there's actually no break in pup production. So you can see from the time you've got 100 females per hectare, you're only 3 weeks away from having well over 600 animals per hectare. And then 3 weeks again, there's the same injection of numbers. So the capacity to rise out of control is really dramatic.
Yeah, well, looking at those pictures from 2021, you get a visceral reaction to seeing them, don't you? Are we heading to see numbers that are that bad this time?
So we're hoping in South Australia not to, and if farmers are able to get on and bait mice as they sow their crops over the next month or so, we're hoping that they'll push numbers down low into the wintertime because they stop breeding in the wintertime and sort of go into survival mode. And so if we get low over winter survival and they start breeding from a low population base in the spring, then the potential for them to do damage to the ripening crop is reduced. In Western Australia, however, as we go into winter over there, it's hard to see those numbers being pushed low. And so, we're going to need to really be on guard as spring kicks in over there and mice start breeding again. The potential for that population to go high and cause damage is really quite high.
And some farmers are calling for an emergency permit to be approved to allow mice bait to be made with double the standard rate of poison. What's your view of that?
Yeah, so that's based on some research that we did. Over a number of years, I gave presentations to farmers about what we deem to be best practice mouse control. And at the end of each of those presentations, farmers would stand up and say, well, that's all right, but the bait doesn't work the way it should. And so we did some research. We did science that tested the sensitivity of mice to zinc phosphide. And we found that instead of taking 1 milligram of zinc phosphide to kill an average sized mouse, in fact, it requires 2 milligrams. And so bait mixed at 50 grams per kilogram of bait substrate means that every grain of bait is a lethal dose. And when there's a lot of other food in the system, if each grain is not a lethal dose, then the probability of them finding those 2 or 3 grains of the lower strength bait to get a lethal dose is significantly reduced. So much better to have, or absolutely critical to have every grain a lethal dose. And that way you get good welfare outcomes for the mice, good mortality rates that knock the population down dramatically, and we actually end up with less zinc phosphide in the system than we would if farmers were doing multiple applications of the lower strength bait.
Okay, that was my next question, whether such a poisonous bait would affect the safety of the crop.
Yeah, so there's not very much work done on residues, but effectively there's 50 grams of zinc phosphide per hectare if you're using the stronger bait. We've certainly been measuring, the work on the Adelaide Plains that we're doing now is comparing the efficacy of the two different baits. And we've been doing bird surveys both pre and post application of the bait. And to date, we haven't found any dead birds associated with baiting in these systems. And we've seen really significant reductions in the number of mice on the experimental sites.
Steve Henry, great to hear your expertise. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.